Mike Koeniger is fresh off a retreat experience. Glad he's back on and hanging out with us and wants to tell us about his time in retreat. Mike Koeniger, good morning to you. Thanks for being on the team today.
Hey. Good morning, Joe. Welcome from windy and stormy southern New England where the power's out. So sadly, I'm on the phone, no video feed today.
Oh, God, you is. If maybe we just had, say, fossil fuels to depend on instead of wind and solar, maybe things would be more reliable. Anyway, that's another story. Hey, lots happened since you've been out of the loop, Mike.
Outside of family, no, sir. Didn't mind being checked out from all this nonsense. And, praise God. It was my family fared well. The little guy was thrilled to see me. The whole church probably heard him yell my name. So it was one of those times. So it was a great week, and I didn't miss anything. Heard there was a power outage too in New York or something. So, but we didn't get any news. We were isolated and amongst the Lord.
All right. Well, tell me about where did you go on retreat, and what was the retreat itself? What kind of retreat was it?
It was a recollection retreat, is what they called it, and it was incredibly powerful. It was at St Ignatius Retreat House in Ridgefield, Connecticut. It's run by the Society. And they have a affiliated church, it's Christ the King, and I'm hoping I'm getting all this right, by the way, Joe. And then there's also a school there on the ground, St. Pio Academy. So it was an on fire time. It was a recollection retreat. It had you started off contemplating your life and all the times you had strayed from the path the Lord set out for us, your sins, spent 2 days just deep in that and doing a proper examination of conscience. And, Joe, I'm not talking about that 30 minutes before you go to the confessional. I'm talking a proper examination of conscience. And then it was amazing. We did meditations on our Lord and grace. And then, of course, we did meditations on hell, too, because you and I know that's the alternative, right?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because just before the show, I played a little video of a Protestant pastor quoting the founder of the Satanic Temple who had that display in Idaho. You missed that, too, while you were on retreat. Michael Cassidy tearing down the Satanic Temple statue thingy-dingy in the State House there. Well, the founder of that organization, on his deathbed, his last words were, something is very wrong. Oh, no. I mean, I can't quote exactly because I can't recall it off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me, but it was along these lines of like, what have I done? Oh, no, something is very, very wrong. Those were his last words. I mean, hell is real and people go there. And I guess your retreat experience reminded you of that?
Oh, Joe, it was, you go into a room, you're all by yourself, and it's exactly what you think it was. This was formerly a seminary, so, the rooms are not terribly spacious, a little bigger than your closet. And but everything was wonderful. Don't misunderstand that comment. But you go in and you contemplate hell. And I thought about it, and I had to relate it to my own personal experiences. I burnt my leg on the muffler on my motorcycle. And so I said, boy, it's going to be hotter than that burning on my leg. And the lights are going to be brighter than a welder, and the wheeling and the gnashing of teeth is going to be like the screaming turbos on the diesels in the engine room on the ships I served on. And, that's the way I had to visualize it because that's everything I could relate to. And thinking about the most, as ugly as those statues are that organization puts on apparently state capitol grounds, think of Satan as being probably even uglier, and the demons. And I got in that state, and Joe, I don't want to go there. And the honest truth is, a week ago, I probably would have. So it's I know we get the graces of our dear Lord, but I was in rebellion. I realize that now, and we probably all are at some point in our lives, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It was.
Yeah.
It was
Let me
scary.
ask you. Let me go back to.
It's not all doom and gloom, Joe. Oh, sorry.
Sure,
sorry.
It is. Of course, it is. Yes, absolutely, it is. 100%. I'm just teasing, of course. But let's go back to what you said a minute ago about preparing for confession, like a good examination. Tell me about that. Like, expand on that. What was different between how you regularly prepare for confession and what you did on the retreat experience?
Well, I think I do normally do what a lot of us do. I go into my missal and I read the examination of conscience, and it goes through commandment by commandment, and you say, have I done this and this since, for me it's usually once a month. What have I done? Have I done this in the last month? Nope, haven't done that. Did you let your mind wander in church? Well, yeah, I did. And you write those things down, or you do a checklist or whatever it is. And that's my normal examination of conscience. I'm a military guy, as you are, and so I'm a checklist guy. Boom, 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 and I go down the checklist. And this was so much different, Joe, because I started from the time that basically I started in my own head when I got confirmed. So, I think I was in 7th grade, and I just started going through it. Was I the altar boy who played around the altar when Father wasn't around? When did I start to use profanity? Did I take the Lord's name in vain? Which, I haven't done in decades, but I'm pretty sure I did it when I was a kid. Because it was cool, right? It was cool. And you start going through that. And then, Joe, it starts to pile on, and it piles on. And then you start getting in those teen years. And did I engage in premarital sex? Did I engage in this? Did I engage in that? And sadly for me, Joe, most of those answers were yes. And then you don't do this in an hour. You do this over 2 days. And it was earth-shattering. This experience was transformational in all the positive ways I can think of, but those first 2 days were pretty brutal. And on me, because, our toughest critic, if we're honest, is us. We are harder on ourselves than anyone else. And, you didn't speak. You were silent this entire retreat, except when you were speaking with the good fathers. And the Father Violette and Father Robinson and Father Seltzen all provided great counsel. And it was tough, Joe, and then I started writing them down. And my first pass was about 8 to 10 pages, handwritten pages.
Wow.
Of sin. It was, and you had encouraged me a couple of years ago to do a proper confession regarding some incidents in my life that I was afraid to bring into the confessional, and I thought that was hard. That was nothing.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Compared to looking, yeah.
But how did you feel? How did you feel when he gave you absolution, though? You felt pretty good, I imagine.
I obviously I won't share the contents of the confessional, but I will share this. Of course. I got to the end. And I'll be honest, big, tough military guy, tears rolling down my face, choking up just like I am now recollecting it. And he said, today the saints in heaven glorify and are praying for you. And, Joe, my comment was, I thought I wouldn't be able to go to communion.
Wow.
That was and he said, goodness, no. And so I left the confessional. I went down to the sin shredder. They had a shredder where you could shred all your papers. And I shredded my papers. I held it together until I got to my room, and then I wept. I wept for 30 minutes and said the rosary to get out of it. Our Blessed Mother got me out of that state. But this was not a unique experience to Mike. I watched several men go through the same thing, and you knew they did because you could see their faces.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, Joe. I have to say this. I spent a week. I didn't talk to these gentlemen. We're all incredibly close. Figure that out. So
yeah, retreats are bizarre things, right? I mean, you don't know a lot of these people that are on retreat with you, and you're only there for a few days, really. And then you leave and you feel like you're bound for life. It's just weird experiences in that regard. But transformative on the other side of that. We're going to be up against a break. You're talking to Mike Koeniger about his intense retreat experience that was transformative. Mike, right before we go to the break, would you say it's fair to say that you would recommend retreat to everyone?
Everyone, and particularly reverts like myself who've been away from the faith for a long time. But, Joe, I would recommend every 2 years. I will be back in 2 years. There's no doubt in my mind.
And we're talking about retreats and retreat experiences. He had a profound one on a silent retreat. And by the way, Mike, how hard was I've been on one silent Ignatian retreat, and it was a much smaller, condensed version of the one you're going on, or one you just came back from. And unfortunately, I got to say, mine was with the Jesuits themselves. And there was some things I could say I loved about it, and then there were some things I could say I absolutely did not love about it. And I don't want to get into that, maybe we can get into it later. I don't know, but it really sucked me out of the moment. But let's talk about this being silent part of that. It was a little tricky for me, I suppose, to be silent the whole time. How was that for you?
Well, I'm a big mouth just like you are, and I love to run my mouth and make new friends. And I love to make new friends, and I wanted to. These men, we shared a common bond in that we're traditional Catholics, and there was a gentleman there with his son, which I thought was amazing. There were young men who were contemplating the priesthood or some other vocation. And there were a lot of guys, from their 40s to their 60s, or I think there was even one gentleman in his 70s who were just looking back at life. And I think the silence was key. And while it was difficult not to communicate verbally with the gentleman you were there with, it allowed you to be reflective and to recollect. And by the way, I read a lot. I completed several books, and so. That time, lights out at 10, up at 6, in the chapel, praying every morning, going to Mass every morning, saying the rosary with men. And you know this, Joe, you've been on retreat. Saying rosary with a bunch of men is an amazing experience in and of itself. But more importantly, it really was very reflective and transformative. I think that's the word I used with you when we talked about this on Saturday after I got done, which, by the way, I haven't seen the movie yet because I just got done with this retreat. It was a Sunday to Saturday time frame. So, and I wasn't going to come home and say, hey, kids, Mom, don't worry about me. I'm going to go watch Joe's movie.
That's right.
I'll watch it this week.
I'll see you guys later. Yeah, again. Yeah. That's the other thing is this retreat experience is longer than normal, right? Like, because most retreats start at Thursday night, then they end on Sunday, and you're home by Sunday afternoon. This one was a much longer retreat.
This was a full 7 days, and Joe, it was boot camp. It was spiritual boot camp. You go in, they tear you down. They bring you down to your lowest. Well, you bring yourself down to your lowest point because you've recollected all the sins you've committed in a lifetime, and when you're old like me, that's a lot. And then they build you back up and tell you, they help you figure out how not to fall into those same traps. And it all comes back to prayer and going to Mass and going to regular confession. They suggest every 2 weeks, by the way, Joe, which I thought was pretty neat because I always hear every month. But it was a different experience. If I would probably wait a few weeks to go again, but if they asked me to come back in 6 months, I'd be back. Wow. And by the way, no expectation of losing weight if you go to this retreat. The food was amazing. The brothers,
they kept feeding
Brother Lewis and Brother Peter and Brother Dismas, they run that retreat house, and the fathers will tell you that. They run that retreat house, the brothers, and they take a vow of poverty. Yeah. And those amazing men. And by the way, you've never seen an altar server like a brother who's been doing it for years. So
that is one challenge with these retreats is they feed you all the time. It feels like all you're doing is eating by the time you're done with the retreat. It's like you're constantly eating. They got snacks for you. I mean, that's the problem with the retreats is I think you almost eat too much on them. Now, let's talk about the variety of retreats out there. I don't know about you, Mike, but I've been on a ton of retreats of varying varieties, and I definitely have a preference. What about you? How many retreats have you been on generally?
I've only been on a few, less than 5, and full disclosure, most of those were more Protestant-oriented. I went on the Good Goats retreat, and you can imagine when Jesus separates us into goats and sheep, the concept of that whole retreat was the goats were going to heaven too. Well, our sacred
Really?
Lord didn't say that, but
Wow.
wow. Yes, it's the problems with the hippie mass and things
Sure.
of that nature. And I'm not trying to be. I should retract that comment. That wasn't appropriate. It's the problems with modernism is we've turned our backs on the reality of hell, and I think there's I can't remember the numbers. I think I reported on it when I was filling in for you, but there's a huge percentage of Catholics that don't believe in hell. Or they don't think people go there, including Cardinal Pell before he went to jail. By the way, once he came out of jail, he recanted that. But before Cardinal Pell went into jail, he thought heaven existed, but it wasn't going to be very full. And so, I think to your point, a lot of these retreats are meet different people in different places in their lives, and maybe they work for some folks, but for a guy like me who was pretty fallen in my life. I don't think those retreats did anything for me except tickle my ears and tell me I was going to heaven anyway, and that's not what this guy needed.
I remember going to Curcio 2004 in New Hampshire. I sat at the table of St. Peter the Rock, it was. I didn't want to be there. I didn't think I needed to be there. I didn't think it was for me. I thought it was for somebody else. I'm like, kind of felt like I got dragged into it. I committed to it because the guy at church kept asking me to go. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And, I didn't love it. I was just kind of disgruntled up until Sunday when I had a transformative experience there. And again, it's hard to describe what goes on in things like that. You sit around lethargically on, listening to people talk for 3 days, and you're drawing and, creating posters and just weird stuff, right? But then people start crying and people start repenting and making changes, and amazing things begin to happen. So I've been on a lot of emotionally based retreats like that now over the years. And although they're not my favorite, I do see a place for them, to be sure. My favorite, though, is the Kingsmen Into the Wild outdoor experiential retreat. That's absolutely my favorite because I don't like sitting around inside listening to people talk. I want to be outside doing stuff. And I find that very interesting. How would you say, if you is this the retreat you just went on? Is it the one retreat that beats them all? Is it kind of like the Ring and Lord of the Rings? Is this the one retreat to rule them all?
It is for this guy. It is for me. It was very Thomason based, and I needed that.
Okay, so let's rate the food on your retreat, Brother Mike. This retreat experience, you did say it was very good, but on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you put the food for this retreat?
For institutional food, at the top of the heap, and I mean that. First off, I have some dietary challenges. As you know, I have celiac disease, so I can't eat gluten, and I put it on the card, and they said they don't accommodate diets, which I get. And I said, listen, you don't have to do anything special for me. Just I wanted to make you aware of it. So if there's something that has gluten in it, so I don't eat it. And I came in, Joe, and they had a loaf of gluten-free bread sitting at my chair with my name on it.
Oh, that's awfully nice of them. Very, very sensitive and detail-oriented.
And the brother who runs the kitchen would come out and say, can you eat this? Can you eat that? Can you eat this? He was just, and you give him a thumbs up because you're not allowed to talk, or thumbs down. But
did you guys learn sign language? Was that how you circumvented?
Well, I do know some American sign because I taught it to our little guy before he could speak. So I thank you and things like that. So I did use some of that. I did circumvent that, but it was just the food. I would give it. It was really, really good food. I mean, they put the same ingredient in their food that your mom and your wife do.
Yeah,
it's the same ingredient, and there was obviously a passion for what they served because there was nothing bad. Everything was wonderful.
Amen.
Like I said, there was no way I was going to lose. I wasn't going to lose weight on this retreat, and it wasn't because it was high-calorie food. It was because I went back for seconds, Joe.
Yeah, buddy.